Time won't wait. Luca Marino had always been a boy of good intentions, just never immediate ones. At 10 years old, he had mastered the art of delay like a seasoned professional. "I'll do it later," had become his mantra, whispered to his mother when she asked about homework, muttered to his teacher when assignments went unfinished, and sighed to his best friend Matteo when he cancelled plans, again. His room was a museum of half-started projects, a model rocket gathering dust on the shelf, a soccer ball deflated in the corner, and a wrinkled school permission slip buried under a week's worth of laundry. His parents had long since stopped counting how many times they'd heard, "Just 5 more minutes!" shouted through his bedroom door. The trouble really began on an unremarkable Tuesday. Luca's alarm blared at 7 a.m. sharp, just like every school morning. His hand shot out from under the covers and slapped the snooze button with practiced precision. 5 more minutes, he mumbled into his pillow. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 20. When he finally opened his eyes, sunlight was streaming through his curtains in a way that screamed, "You're late!" Chaos ensued. Luca tripped over his own backpack trying to pull on his shoes simultaneously. He grabbed yesterday's crumpled shirt from the floor, close enough to clean, and nearly took the door off its hinges in his rush downstairs. "Luca Marino!" His mother's voice could have shattered glass. "Your lunch is on the counter, and for heaven's sake, at least comb your—" "Later, Mom!" The front door slammed behind him before she could finish. He arrived at school just as the second bell rang, earning a disappointed look from Mr. Fernandez and a chorus of giggles from his classmates. His best friend Matteo shook his head as Luca collapsed into his seat. "Dude," Matteo whispered, "this is like the 4th time this week. I'll wake up earlier tomorrow." Luca promised automatically, already knowing it was a lie. That afternoon, Luca took the long way home, kicking a pebble along the sidewalk. Going home meant facing his mom's lecture about responsibility, his dad's disappointed sigh over another missed soccer practice, and worst of all, the mountain of homework waiting on his desk. That's when he saw it. Tucked between the bakery and the laundromat, 2 places he definitely should have visited this week, was a tiny toy shop he'd never noticed before. The window display held the most magnificent train set he'd ever seen, a steam engine puffing real smoke, tiny trees that swayed as if in a breeze, and a clockwork station master who tipped his hat every 30 seconds. As Luca pressed his nose against the glass, the shop door creaked open. "See something you like, young man?" An elderly gentleman with wild white hair and a waistcoat covered in clock gears stood in the doorway. A silver pocket watch dangled from his vest, its chain glinting in the afternoon sun. Luca hesitated. The train set was incredible, but "Maybe later," he said automatically, already stepping back. Something strange happened then. The old man's cheerful expression darkened. "Later isn't promised to any of us, boy," he said quietly. Tick-tock, tick-tock. But Luca was already walking away, the strange encounter fading from his mind as quickly as it had come. Dinner that night was a disaster. "Luca, you didn't take out the trash," his mother said, pointing to the overflowing bin. "I forgot to tell you," his sister Sophia added. "You missed my flute recital today." Again. His father didn't even look up from his plate. Coach Rodriguez called. "If you miss one more practice, I'll do better tomorrow," Luca shouted, shoving his chair back so hard it toppled over. He stormed upstairs before anyone could respond. He threw himself onto his bed, and immediately yelped in pain. Something sharp was digging into his ribs. Under his pillow, cold metal met his fingers. Luca pulled out the old man's silver pocket watch. "What the—" Before he could finish the thought, the watch began to glow. The hands spun wildly, faster and faster, until Luca felt the world drop out from under him. He tumbled through darkness, the watch burning in his hand, until thud. He landed hard on cobblestones. When his vision cleared, Luca found himself in the strangest town he'd ever seen. The sky was a perpetual twilight gray. The buildings stood crooked and worn, their signs reading things like "Grand Opening," "Eventually," "Sale Starts," "One Day." The people were even stranger. They moved as if wading through molasses, their faces blank. A woman shuffled past, murmuring, "I'll visit Mom, soon." A teenager nearby whispered, "I'll start my homework, in a bit." Then Luca saw the statues. Dozens of them, scattered throughout the town square, people frozen mid-step, their faces caught in expressions of vague regret. The most terrifying part: some of the statues were only partially turned to stone. A businessman had stone legs but still moving arms. A little girl's face had hardened completely while her pigtails still swayed. "What is this place?" Luca whispered. "The land of later," said a familiar voice. The old man from the toy shop stood before him, though now he wore a long coat covered in ticking clocks. "Where people who always say later come to wait." "Wait for what?" "For the time they wasted," the old man said sadly. "Every later steals a piece of your future, Luca. And here, eventually, there's nothing left but stone." As if to prove his point, the half-stone businessman let out a groan as his left hand stiffened into rock. The old man led Luca to the edge of town, where a massive sand castle stood crumbling into the sea. "This is yours," the old man said. "Mine? Every grain represents time you wasted." As they watched, an entire tower collapsed. "That was when you promised to help your dad clean the garage last summer," the old man said. Another wall crumbled. "That? The book report you left until the night before." Luca's stomach twisted as more sand poured away. "And that—" "Stop!" Luca shouted. "I get it. But how do I fix this?" The old man held out the pocket watch. "Turn back time, but only if you truly mean to change." Luca grabbed the watch and gasped awake in his own bed. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. His room was spotless. His backpack sat by the door, packed and ready. Through the window, he saw himself playing catch with Matteo in the yard. The pocket watch lay in his palm, warm and ticking. Its face now read, "Time is the only treasure you can't get back once spent." The changes started small. Luca set 2 alarms, one across the room so he had to get up. He did homework immediately after school, before even turning on his game console. When his mom asked for help with dinner, he said, "Sure," instead of, "In a minute." At first, it felt impossible. His fingers itched to grab his controller instead of his math book. His bed begged him to hit snooze just one more time. But slowly, something amazing happened. Luca started finishing things. His grades improved. His parents stopped sighing in disappointment. Matteo stopped rolling his eyes when Luca said, "Let's hang out." Best of all, Luca realized he actually had more free time now that he wasn't constantly rushing to finish yesterday's tasks. Months later, Luca passed the spot where the strange toy shop had been. In its place stood a simple sundial, its shadow stretching across an inscription. "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." Luca smiled and checked his watch, not out of habit, but with purpose.